My name is Victoria Reynolds. For 12 years, I've served my country in the Air Force. Today, I sit outside my uncle's mansion in Westchester County, New York, remembering why I left this place behind. The iron gates, manicured lawns, and luxury cars scream old money and privilege, everything I was never supposed to have. I adjust my dress blues before stepping out. The annual Reynolds family reunion was always a spectacle, but this year feels different. This year, I'm different. 3 years ago, my cousins Brandon and Jessica made sure I knew my place in the family hierarchy. Still playing soldier, Vic? Brandon had smirked. When are you going to get a real job? The Reynolds family built their fortune on Reynolds Construction. My grandfather started it in 1952. What began as a small operation grew into a multi-million-dollar empire, handling residential and commercial projects across the Northeast. My uncle Richard runs the company now. Brandon and Jessica are positioned as his successors. They've never let me forget that while they were born into boardrooms, I chose barracks. Walking through my uncle's house, I'm greeted by the usual cast. Aunt Margaret, dripping in diamonds, comments on how thin I look. Cousin Brandon gives me a patronizing pat. Jessica barely glances up from her phone. Victoria, still in the military, I see. Uncle Richard booms. How's the pay these days? Still scraping by, I imagine. The room chuckles politely. That uncomfortable laughter that happens when someone says something cruel but true. I smile and nod, playing the part they expect. The poor relation. The one who chose service over money. The one who lives paycheck to paycheck while they count trust fund dividends. If only they knew about the nights I've spent studying market trends and financial reports. If only they knew about the side businesses I've quietly built. If only they knew about the investment portfolio I've been constructing for 8 years. But they don't know. And that's exactly how I want it. The evening progresses predictably. Brandon talks about his latest real estate acquisition in the Hamptons. Jessica shows photos from her month in Monaco. Uncle Richard discusses expansion plans for Reynolds Construction, mentioning contracts worth millions. You know, Vic, Jessica says over dinner, if you ever want to give up this military thing, I'm sure Dad could find you something in the company. Maybe an HR or admin. Something appropriate. The word appropriate hangs in the air like a slap. Something suitable for the poor cousin. Something that wouldn't threaten their positions. I thank her for the generous offer, my voice steady and grateful. Inside, I'm calculating. Reynolds Construction's annual revenue hovers around $80 million. Their profit margins have been declining for 2 years due to increased competition and questionable management decisions. They're solid, but not untouchable. Not impossible to acquire, if one knew what they were doing. As the evening winds down, I catch fragments of conversation from the kitchen. Poor Victoria. Aunt Margaret sighs. Such a waste. Uncle Richard's voice rumbles in agreement. Military pension won't take her far. I worry about her future. Their concern is touching, really. But they have no idea that while they've been living off my grandfather's legacy, I've been building my own. Tomorrow, I fly back to my base in Colorado. But the wheels are already turning in my mind. 6 months later, I'm back in Colorado Springs. But my mind is still in New York. My small apartment near Peterson Air Force Base doesn't look like much. Basic furniture, military-issued everything, a bedroom that doubles as my office. But it's become the command center for something much bigger than my cousins could imagine. The irony isn't lost on me. While Brandon and Jessica see my military service as a limitation, it's been my greatest asset. 12 years in Air Force intelligence taught me to gather information, analyze patterns, and identify weaknesses. My laptop screen glows in the pre-dawn darkness as I review financial documents on Reynolds Construction, public records, SEC filings, industry reports, competitor analyses. I've built a comprehensive picture of my family's business. Reynolds Construction is bleeding money, slowly but steadily. Uncle Richard's expansion into commercial real estate 3 years ago looked good on paper, but execution has been sloppy. Cost overruns, delayed projects, client complaints that never make local news but show up in industry publications. The company's debt-to-equity ratio has been climbing. Their cash flow is tighter than they'd ever admit at family gatherings. Meanwhile, my own financial situation tells a very different story. What my family sees as a struggling military salary is actually just my base income. They don't know about the 3 LLCs I've established. The consulting work I do for private security firms during leave time. The mobile app I developed that generates 6 figures annually in passive income. They certainly don't know about my investment portfolio, now worth just over $6 million. My phone buzzes with a text from Marcus Chen, a former Air Force buddy who became a financial planner in Manhattan. VR, got the latest intel on Reynolds Construction? You sitting down? I call him immediately. Your uncle's in deeper trouble than we thought. I've got a contact at First National who says Reynolds is shopping for a major line of credit. Word is, they're cash poor and need at least $10 million to keep current projects afloat. There's also talk about selling off subsidiaries. This is the opening I've been waiting for. What kind of timeline? 6 to 8 months max. If they can't secure financing or find buyers for non-core assets, they'll be vulnerable to a hostile takeover. Marcus pauses. Vic, you sure you want to do this? It's your family we're talking about. I stare out my apartment window at the sunrise painting the mountains gold. My family. The same family that spent decades making me feel like an outsider. Marcus, start putting together an acquisition team. Quietly. I want lawyers, accountants, and a public relations firm on standby. We're going to need shell companies, multiple layers of ownership to keep my name out until the very end. Over the next few weeks, I use military travel orders to make strategic trips to the East Coast. While officially attending training conferences, I'm actually meeting with Marcus's team, touring office spaces, and conducting reconnaissance on Reynolds Construction. The picture becomes clearer with each visit. Uncle Richard is proud, maybe too proud to admit the company needs help. Brandon is more interested in lifestyle than business. Jessica has good instincts but no real authority. I start making subtle inquiries through industry contacts, expressing interest in investment opportunities in construction and development. I attend trade shows and networking events, always in civilian clothes, always using shell company identities. The most interesting discovery comes during a construction industry conference in Boston. I overhear 2 executives discussing Reynolds Construction's recent bid for a major municipal project. Richard Reynolds is getting desperate, one says. His numbers are way too low. He's basically bidding at cost just to keep his crews busy. Desperation creates opportunity, and opportunity is exactly what I've been waiting for. The financial district in Lower Manhattan feels like another planet compared to military bases, but I've learned to navigate this terrain with precision. Today, I'm in a glass conference room on the 42nd floor. Marcus has assembled what he calls our acquisition team. 3 lawyers, 2 accountants, a public relations specialist, and a private investigator who specializes in corporate intelligence. They think they're working for Victoria Reed, CEO of Reed Strategic Holdings, one of my shell companies. Ladies and gentlemen, I begin, sliding folders across the table. Our target is Reynolds Construction, based in Westchester County, New York. This is a family-owned company with approximately $80 million in annual revenue and some significant vulnerabilities we can exploit. Sarah Goldman, lead attorney from Whitman & Associates, flips through the financial analysis. Their debt load has increased 30% over the past 18 months. What's driving the acquisition interest? I maintain my composure. I believe this company has significant untapped potential under new management. The next 3 hours feel like a military briefing. We discuss acquisition strategies, financing options, regulatory requirements, and timeline considerations. The key, explains David Morrison, our corporate strategy consultant, is to approach this as a rescue operation rather than a hostile takeover. If we can position ourselves as a solution to their cash flow problems, we can negotiate from a position of strength. Perfect. That's exactly the angle I was hoping for. Over the following weeks, I execute a plan that would make my old intelligence commanders proud. Using my military leave time, I make frequent trips to New York, ostensibly to visit family, but actually to deepen my understanding of Reynolds Construction's operations. I start attending local business networking events in Westchester County, always as Victoria Reed from Reed Strategic Holdings. I make contacts with suppliers, subcontractors, and local officials who work with Reynolds Construction. The breakthrough comes when I learn about the Millbrook Heights development, a luxury residential project that Reynolds Construction won 6 months ago. It's a $40 million contract that should have been a significant win, but instead it's becoming a financial nightmare. I schedule a meeting with the project manager, Tom Bradley, ostensibly to discuss potential collaboration opportunities. Richard Reynolds is a good man, built this company from nothing. But the business has gotten too complex for the old school approach. Brandon means well, but he doesn't understand the operational side. And Jessica, she's smart, but Richard won't give her any real authority. What would it take to get the company back on track? I ask. Tom considers this carefully. Capital injection, probably 15 to 20 million. New leadership at the operational level. But that's not going to happen. Richard's too proud to bring in outside investors, and the kids aren't ready to challenge him. This conversation confirms what my financial analysis already suggested. Reynolds Construction needs exactly the kind of intervention I'm prepared to provide. I spend the next month developing what Marcus and I call the White Knight strategy. Instead of approaching Reynolds Construction directly, we'll create a situation where they come to us. That moment comes sooner than expected. Marcus calls me on a Friday evening in November with urgent news. Vic, Reynolds Construction just lost the Millbrook Heights contract. The client pulled out citing budget concerns and timeline delays. That's a $40 million hit they can't absorb. Soon, he'll need to make a choice. Accept help, or watch everything crumble. Marcus, it's time. Start reaching out through intermediaries. Let it be known that Reed Strategic Holdings is interested in partnering with established construction companies facing temporary financial challenges. December in Colorado. Springs brings bone-deep cold, but I barely notice it today. My phone has been buzzing constantly with updates from Marcus and the team in New York. Reynolds Construction is in free fall, exactly as we predicted. The Millbrook Heights contract termination was just the beginning. Within 2 weeks, 2 other clients delayed their projects, citing concerns about Reynolds Construction's financial stability. I'm reviewing the latest intelligence reports when my personal phone rings. Uncle Richard's name appears on the screen. Uncle Richard, what a surprise. How are things in New York? His voice sounds tired, older than I remember. Victoria, sweetheart, I hope you don't mind me calling. I wanted to check in on you, see how you're doing. That's very sweet of you. How's business? Last time I saw you, things seemed to be going really well with all those expansion plans. There's a pause. Business has its ups and downs, you know. We've had some challenges lately. Nothing we can't handle, of course. Victoria, I have to ask, what exactly do you do when you're not on active duty? Do you have any business interests? Investments? This is it. The opening I've been waiting for. Oh, here and there. I've been fortunate with some investments over the years. Nothing dramatic, but it helps supplement the military income, you know. Investments? What kind of investments? I can hear the hopeful note in his voice. Real estate, some tech stocks, a few business ventures. I've been lucky to have some good advisors. Business ventures? Victoria, I had no idea that you had gotten involved in business. The military teaches you to be resourceful, Uncle Richard. You learn to make the most of every opportunity. I pause for effect. Is everything okay? You sound a little stressed. Another long pause. Victoria, this might sound strange, but if you ever had some extra capital sitting around, looking for investment opportunities, would you be interested in hearing about something? Something in the family? Perfect. He's taking the bait exactly as I hoped. Extra capital? Well, I suppose I might have some resources available for the right opportunity. What did you have in mind? Maybe we could discuss it in person? I know it's a lot to ask with your schedule, but if you could make it to New York sometime soon, I pretend to consider this. Let me check my leave schedule. I might be able to swing a long weekend after the holidays. Would early January work? January would be perfect. We could have dinner, just the 2 of us. Talk about some possibilities. After I hang up, I immediately call Marcus with the update. Phase 1 complete. Uncle Richard is officially interested in my mysterious investment capital. Time to move to Phase 2. The next few weeks pass in careful preparation. My team in New York researches every aspect of Reynolds Construction's operations, develops detailed financial projections, and prepares multiple scenarios for the acquisition discussion. The holiday season brings the usual family texts and calls, but this year they feel different. Brandon and Jessica reach out more than usual, asking about my plans and expressing interest in catching up. Word has clearly spread that I might have resources worth cultivating. Jessica's call comes 2 days before Christmas. Vic, Dad mentioned you might visit after New Year's. That would be amazing. You know, I've been thinking about finding you something more substantial at the company. Maybe a role in business development or strategic planning? The irony is delicious. 6 months ago, Jessica was offering me an administrative position out of pity. Now, with rumors circulating about my investment activities, suddenly I'm qualified for strategic roles. That sounds intriguing. I've actually learned quite a bit about business development through some consulting work I've been doing. Perfect. This could be exactly what the company needs. Yes, I think as I hang up, this could be exactly what the company needs, just not in the way Jessica imagines. The Westchester Country Club in January is a monument to understated wealth, leather-bound menus, crystal chandeliers, and the kind of hushed atmosphere that comes with generations of old money. Uncle Richard chose this venue for our private dinner meeting, and I can't help but appreciate the symbolism. I arrive precisely on time, dressed in a conservative navy business suit. Uncle Richard is already seated at a corner table, nursing what appears to be his second scotch. Victoria! He stands to embrace me, and I notice immediately how much weight he's lost since the reunion. The stress is showing in his posture, the slight tremor in his hands. We order dinner and make small talk about family, my military service, his memories of my father. The conversation feels different this time, less patronizing, more genuinely curious about my life and choices. Victoria, he says finally, as our main courses arrive, I'm going to be direct with you. Reynolds Construction is facing some challenges, significant challenges. We've had some setbacks with major projects, some cash flow issues, and frankly, we need an infusion of capital to get back on track. I nod sympathetically. I'm sorry to hear that, Uncle Richard. I know how much the company means to you. It's Grandpa's legacy. Exactly. Which is why I can't just let it fail. His voice carries a note of desperation. What kind of capital infusion are we talking about? He leans forward slightly. 15 million would solve our immediate problems. 20 million would allow us to pursue some expansion opportunities and really position the company for long-term growth. That's a substantial investment. What would an investor get in return? For a family member, someone we trust completely, we might consider a partnership arrangement. Significant equity position, seat on the board, active involvement in strategic decisions. That's very generous, I say, knowing I need to play this exactly right. But I have to be honest with you, Uncle Richard. $20 million isn't the kind of money I have sitting in my personal savings account. His face falls slightly. However, I continue, allowing a small smile. I do have connections to people who might be very interested in this kind of opportunity. Investment groups that specialize in family businesses with strong fundamentals, but temporary challenges. Hope flickers in his eyes. What kind of investment groups? Well, there's one in particular that I've been consulting with on construction and defense industry opportunities. Reed Strategic Holdings. They're always looking for established companies with good reputations and growth potential. Reed Strategic Holdings? Are they reputable? Very much so. They focus on acquiring companies that need capital and strategic guidance, but they prefer to work with existing management rather than cleaning house. Would you be able to arrange a meeting? I think that could be arranged, I say carefully. But Uncle Richard, I need to be clear about something. If Reed Strategic Holdings invests $20 million in Reynolds Construction, they're going to want significant say in how the company operates. What kind of say? Majority ownership, probably. Seats on the board. Approval authority for major expenditures and strategic decisions. They would want to work with you and Brandon and Jessica, but ultimately, they would need control to protect their investment. Uncle Richard is quiet for a long moment. Majority ownership. After 60 years in business, I'd be working for someone else. You'd be working with someone else. Someone who wants the company to succeed and has the resources to make that happen. Uncle Richard, what's more important? Maintaining control of a company that's struggling or ensuring that Grandpa's legacy survives? Finally, as we prepare to leave, he looks at me with something approaching desperation. Victoria, if you could arrange a meeting with these Reed Strategic Holdings people, I'd be very grateful. And if they do decide to invest, would you consider staying involved? Maybe taking a position with them, helping to manage the transition? Perfect. The final piece falls into place. I think that could be arranged, Uncle Richard. Let me make some calls, see what kind of interest they might have. As I drive back to my hotel, I can't help but smile. Uncle Richard just asked me to help him sell his company to me. 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in the offices of Whitman and Associates in Midtown Manhattan. The conference room is designed to intimidate, with floor-to-ceiling law books and Persian rugs. Today, I'm Victoria Reed, CEO of Reed Strategic Holdings, sitting across from Uncle Richard, Brandon, Jessica, and their attorney. They think they're negotiating with a savvy outside investor. They have no idea they're selling to the cousin they've spent decades dismissing as the family failure. Marcus sits beside me, playing his role as my chief financial advisor perfectly. As you can see, Uncle Richard says, pointing to a chart showing Reynolds Construction's revenue projections, we have excellent fundamentals. Our reputation in the industry is solid. Our client relationships are strong. What he's not mentioning are the cost overruns, the cash flow problems, or the fact that 3 major clients have delayed projects. I already know all of this, but I need to play the part of the careful investor. Impressive numbers, I say, making notes on my tablet. However, I'm concerned about some trends I see here. Your profit margins have declined consistently over the past 18 months, and your debt-to-equity ratio has increased significantly. Brandon shifts uncomfortably. Well, that's just temporary. The expansion into commercial development required some upfront investment. Mr. Reynolds, I interrupt politely but firmly, Reed Strategic Holdings has extensive experience in the construction industry. We understand that expansion requires capital, but we also understand that sustainable growth requires disciplined financial management. Jessica leans forward. Miss Reed, we're confident these short-term challenges can be addressed with proper capitalization. That's why we're interested in partnering with an organization like yours. Time to clarify the real terms. Let's discuss the structure Reed Strategic Holdings would require, I say, signaling Marcus to distribute our proposal documents. Based on our analysis, Reynolds Construction needs an immediate capital injection of $25 million to address current obligations and fund operations for the next 18 months. Uncle Richard's eyes widen slightly. $25 million is more than he asked for. In exchange for this investment, I continue, Reed Strategic Holdings would acquire 70% ownership of Reynolds Construction, with options to increase that percentage based on performance milestones over the next 3 years. The room goes very quiet. 70% means complete control, and everyone knows it. 70% seems, Uncle Richard starts, then trails off. Aggressive? Mr. Reynolds, I understand that selling majority control of a family business is difficult, but consider the alternative. Without this capital injection, what are Reynolds Construction's prospects over the next 6 months? This is the moment of truth. Uncle Richard can either accept that he's lost control of his company, or walk away and face bankruptcy within months. I watch his face as he weighs his options, seeing the exact moment when pride gives way to practicality. What would the management structure look like? Jessica asks quietly. Reed Strategic Holdings believes in working with existing management whenever possible. However, we would need to install our own CEO and CFO to oversee the turnaround process. We spend the next 2 hours going through detailed financial projections and operational plans. Finally, Uncle Richard speaks the words I've been waiting to hear. Miss Reed, we'd like to accept your proposal. 2 days later, Uncle Richard calls me personally. Not Victoria Reed, the investor. Victoria Reynolds, the family member. Victoria, I need to ask you something. These Reed Strategic Holdings people, are they legitimate? Are they really going to honor the terms they've proposed? The irony of his question isn't lost on me. He's asking me to vouch for myself. Uncle Richard, based on everything I know about Reed Strategic Holdings, they're exactly what they appear to be. A well-capitalized investment firm that specializes in turning around family businesses. Victoria, if this goes through, would you consider taking a position with Reed Strategic Holdings, maybe helping to manage the transition? Perfect. Uncle Richard is not only going to sell me his company, he's going to ask me to run it. Let me think about it, Uncle Richard. It would be a big career change for me, leaving the military for corporate life. But if Reed Strategic Holdings made the right offer. 1 week later, Uncle Richard calls to accept Reed Strategic Holdings' offer. The legal process will take another month, but effectively, I now own Reynolds Construction. March 15th. The date is burned into my memory because it's the day everything changes. After 3 months of legal negotiations, Reed Strategic Holdings officially completed the acquisition of Reynolds Construction. Today is my first day as the new CEO, and today is the day I tell my family the truth. I arrive at Reynolds Construction headquarters in White Plains at exactly 8 a.m., wearing a tailored charcoal business suit. The building looks exactly as I remember from childhood visits. Uncle Richard is waiting in the lobby, looking older and more fragile than I've ever seen him. "Miss Reed," he says formally, extending his hand. "Welcome to Reynolds Construction." "Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. I'm confident this partnership will be beneficial for everyone involved." I shake his hand, maintaining the professional facade just a little longer. The morning starts with a company-wide meeting. Uncle Richard introduces me as Victoria Reed, the new CEO representing Reed Strategic Holdings. I see curiosity, concern, and resignation on various faces. "Good morning," I begin. "I know you have questions and concerns about Reed Strategic Holdings' acquisition of Reynolds Construction, and I want to address those directly." I explain our plans for operational improvements, financial stability, and long-term growth. Throughout the presentation, I can feel Uncle Richard watching me with growing amazement. After the general meeting, I convene a smaller session with the senior management team: Uncle Richard, Brandon, Jessica, and 3 department heads. "Ladies and gentlemen," I say, closing the conference room door, "let's discuss how we're going to turn this company around." For the next 2 hours, I walk them through detailed financial projections, operational efficiency targets, and strategic growth plans. I demonstrate knowledge of their operations that should be impossible for an outside CEO to possess. Jessica is the first to voice what everyone is thinking. "Miss Reed, your understanding of our business is remarkably detailed. How long has Reed Strategic Holdings been studying Reynolds Construction?" This is it, the moment I've been planning for 2 years. "Jessica, that's an excellent question." I reach into my briefcase and pull out a different folder, one containing family photos, military service records, and financial documents. Reed Strategic Holdings has been studying Reynolds Construction for exactly 18 months, but I've been studying it my entire life. I place a photograph on the conference table. It's from the last family reunion, showing all of us together on Uncle Richard's patio. Uncle Richard stares at the photo, then at me, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and shock. "Victoria?" "Hello, Uncle Richard." "Hello, Brandon." "Hello, Jessica." I remove my business suit jacket and sit down at the head of the conference table. I believe we have some things to discuss. The silence is deafening. Brandon's mouth is literally hanging open. Jessica has gone pale. "You're..." Uncle Richard starts, then stops. "You're Victoria Reed. You're Reed Strategic Holdings?" Victoria Reed is a professional identity I created for business purposes. Reed Strategic Holdings is a company I founded and personally capitalized with approximately $6 million of my own money, plus another $20 million in secured financing. I spread out financial documents showing my investment portfolio, business holdings, and bank statements. "The poor military cousin you've been worrying about for the past decade has been building a business empire while you assumed I was scraping by on government paychecks." Brandon finds his voice first. "That's impossible. You live in base housing. You drive a 10-year-old Honda." "Brandon, I live in base housing because it's practical and saves money that I can invest elsewhere. I drive a reliable car because flashy vehicles are depreciating assets. The military taught me discipline, strategic thinking, and resource management." Jessica is staring at the financial documents. "Victoria, these numbers, you're showing liquid assets of over $6 million. How? Compound interest, reinvested dividends, strategic real estate investments, and 3 different businesses I built during off-duty hours over the past 8 years. The mistake you all made was assuming that military service and wealth creation are mutually exclusive." Uncle Richard is still processing the revelation. "Victoria, you bought my company." "Uncle Richard, I saved Reynolds Construction. 4 months ago you were facing bankruptcy. Without intervention, you would have lost everything Grandpa built. But why didn't you just offer to help his family? Why the elaborate deception?" "Uncle Richard, when's the last time you asked me about my finances? About my goals? At family gatherings, you offered pity and occasional job suggestions. Brandon made jokes about my playing soldier. Jessica offered me clerical positions, appropriate for someone of my limited prospects. I stand up and walk to the window. None of you ever considered that I might be successful on my own terms. You saw the uniform and assumed limitation rather than discipline." The room stays quiet for several long minutes. Finally, Jessica speaks up. "So what happens now? Are you firing us?" I return to my seat and pull out one final document, an organizational chart showing the new management structure. Jessica, you're being promoted to Chief Operating Officer, effective immediately. Your instincts about project management and client relations are excellent. Her eyes widen. What? You heard me. COO. You'll report directly to me, and you'll have operational control over all current projects and client relationships. I turned to Uncle Richard. Uncle Richard, you're transitioning to Chairman Emeritus, an advisory role that lets you maintain relationships with long-term clients. You'll have an office, a secretary, and a consulting fee that's probably larger than your previous salary. Relief floods his face. Brandon, I continue, you're being reassigned to Regional Sales Manager for our new Commercial Development Division. You'll be responsible for identifying and cultivating new business relationships. It's a real job with real responsibilities, but also clearly a demotion from his assumed position as heir apparent. Jessica raises her hand tentatively. Victoria, are you angry with us? Is this some kind of revenge? Jessica, I'm not angry anymore. I was angry for a long time. Angry at being dismissed. Angry at being underestimated. But anger is a poor foundation for business decisions. I lean forward, making eye contact with each of them. I bought Reynolds Construction because it's a good investment opportunity, and because I believe this family has the potential to build something impressive together. But that potential can only be realized if we base our relationships on mutual respect. Uncle Richard clears his throat. Victoria, I owe you an apology. We all do. We made assumptions about your life and your capabilities that were clearly wrong. I'm sorry. Apology accepted, Uncle Richard. But more importantly, are you ready to move forward? Are you ready to help me turn Reynolds Construction into the kind of company Grandpa would be proud of? He nods firmly. Yes, absolutely. I stand up and extend my hand to Uncle Richard. Then let's get to work. We have a company to run. As we shake hands, I realize that I've achieved everything I set out to accomplish. I own the family business. I've proven my capabilities beyond any doubt, and I've positioned myself to build something lasting and meaningful. But more than that, I've finally taken my place in the Reynolds family, not as the poor relation who needed their charity, but as the leader who saved their legacy. Tomorrow we start building the next chapter of Reynolds Construction, and this time, I'll be the one writing the story. You know, when I decided to share my story, I knew most people would just listen and move on. That's okay. But if something I said today made you feel a little less alone in your struggle, if it reminded you that you're stronger than people think, then maybe you could help me reach others who need to hear this too. The truth is, almost nobody subscribes to these stories, even though it's completely free and it's the only support I really need to keep sharing them. I'm not asking you to buy anything or pay for anything. I'm just asking for that simple click that says, you believe these stories matter, because somewhere out there is another person sitting in their small apartment, feeling underestimated, feeling overlooked, wondering if they'll ever be enough. And your subscription helps me reach them with the message that they already are. If my story moved you, if it reminded you of your own strength, then please subscribe. It takes 2 seconds, costs nothing, and helps me continue telling the stories of people who refuse to let others define their worth. Thank you for listening. And remember, you're writing your own story every single day. Make it count.